Littleton. This is the July 12th, 2023 Board of Health meeting. Before we hear our first public hearing,
I think VFW.
Sorry about that, folks. Before we start our first public hearing, I just want to touch base with the members of the board. Our next scheduled meeting is July 26th. Just so before we refer anyone to our next regularly scheduled meeting, I just want to make sure that we're going to have quorum for that date. So can I ask who worked the room? Kevin Baker, are you available on that day? Thank you, sir. Kevin Davis.
I believe so.
Awesome. Gino's busy at the moment. Matt Wason, are you available that day?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, sir. Unfortunately, I will be unavailable that day. I will be in beautiful West Virginia serving 20,000 scouts, making sure they're all safe and sound and not injured to the best of my ability. So I apologize, it will not be available, but it sounds like we will have quorum for that meeting. So we'll keep that on the agenda. Matt, as vice chair, if you wouldn't mind taking the helm on that one, I would appreciate it.
You bet.
All right. Thank you, sir. It is 7:01. We're going to start with our first public hearing for 47 Warren Street. I'm going to promote Evan to talk about consideration of approval of the use of a sieve analysis in place of a perk test. Good evening, Mr. Carloni. Welcome. Tell us a story about 47 Warren.
Hi. Yes. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on. So 47 Warren Street is a existing three-bedroom home with a failed septic system that we are looking to replace. There is a reasonable water table, about average at around 4 feet on this property. Good material on site, but unfortunately in one of the test holes and pretty much everywhere we tried to perk, there was about a 2-foot sandy loam layer, which was holding up some water. So we really couldn't get a perk in the most restrictive soil. We could have perked the other soil, but it wouldn't have been reflective of the most restrictive. So that layer was holding up some water. So we took a sample of that and we took that to Geotesting Express in Acton to run a sieve analysis. So that is one of the requests this evening, is the approval of that sieve analysis. The other request is approval of the 2-foot reduction allowed by the remedial use approval. From 4 foot to 2 foot offset from the estimated high groundwater table. What that will do is keep this system working gravity, and will also keep their yard nice and usable and not mounted. So those are the 2 requests tonight. I don't know if you have a copy of the plan in front of you. I can certainly screen share if needed. Oh, Dan, I think you're muted.
I am. If you could share it, that would be great.
All right.
And while you're pulling that up, I'll just read Jim's notes. Unfortunately, Jim Gareffi, our health agent, is not able to be with us tonight, but he did share his notes for the meeting. So his notes for 47 Warren have: the sewage disposal system for the site is in active failure, with sewage discharging to the surface of the ground. Soil testing was conducted for the design of a replacement system, and a suitable location was found. The water table was elevated at 4 feet below grade. The approval of an innovative alternative leaching area by the DEP, in this case the Presby system, allows designers to request up to 2-foot reduction in the offset between groundwater and the bottom of the leaching area. The standard Title V offset is 4 feet. The designer is requesting a 2-foot reduction from the 4 feet offset to enable the leaching area to be served by gravity flow and to minimize the grading needed. The site is served by town water, and there are no wetlands within the area of the system. I believe the design of the system presented is a reasonable solution to address this situation. All right, so Mr. Carloni, if you have anything to share on the plan, and then we will go around the room.
All right, great. So can everybody see the plan view in front of on the screen? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we're replacing a tank which is just off of the deck and a leach field which is behind the house. We tested away from that leach field because it's an active failure. It is coming up through the surface. So we're going to come out past the tank here, get a little bit of space from the house, and then go over past the existing leach field down to a Presby field, downhill from the septic tank. We do have a bypass vent, which bypasses the effluent T filter in the outlet of the septic tank. And so we just make gravity here. I think we have just over 1% from the septic tank to the leach field. So we do make gravity, which is nice to have.
All right, let's go around the room. Kevin Baker, do you have any questions, comments?
No, it looks great.
Okay, Kevin Davis.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. So a couple of questions. First question is, why was this position of the leach field chosen versus something that would be in the southwest corner of the property there, down near your little dig safe symbol?
Mm-hmm. So there's this stone patio area here. They really didn't want that disturbed. It would going down here, it went uphill before it went downhill. Eventually it did go downhill, but first it went uphill. So we just figured there was a natural flow going to the north of a downhill trajectory. So that's really the reason why we decided to test where we did, to not disturb the area that they prefer not to disturb.
But we didn't do any testing over there just to see if the groundwater was lower.
No.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No.
Oh, okay. The other thing is the bypass venting description or image there that you have. I'm guessing you're just showing it as the bypass venting example, even though it has a pump chamber. This does not have a pump chamber per the drawing. Is that correct? This is just an example.
That's correct. Yeah, it's just to show the raised connections, to show how the Presby, the manufacturer, wants the connections to be made back to the tank. Yeah.
Okay. Those are the only questions I have. Does the drawing, sorry, one more. Does the drawing have the exceptions on it?
So the local upgrade is listed over here.
Okay.
And then the description of the 2-foot offset by the approval letter is listed down here.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Gino Fratelloni, any questions or comments for the designer?
He has a nice lot. I don't see any problem. If he objected to do on the other side, is because he's up a hill, then got down the hill. So he just made sure that it's going to be downhill on their side. And it's got plenty of room there. I don't think I have any problem.
Okay, thank you, Gino. Matt Wason, any comments or questions?
No, I'm just looking at the aerial photos, and it looks like part of what, Davis, you were asking about, that little driveway there, it looks like it's actually part of a U driveway and then a shed at the end of that fence. So there's more stuff on the property down there. Granted, it's street side, but it's definitely not like quite as open as I think it appears on there. So I feel like if you were doing that, you'd have to tuck it a lot closer to that back lot line potentially. But I would similarly ask, like, well, why wouldn't you at least just dig a hole and test it over there just so you know? And I wonder if you could have made the whole run a little shorter, but I agree. This fits and in line with what we usually discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Chair has no questions or comments. Any further discussion? Oh, sorry. Kevin Baker, go ahead.
Evan, what did the sieve come back as?
Sandy Loam.
Is that,
So-
is it like 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good too. Yep.
Great, thanks.
All right, any discussion from the board? Kevin Baker,
I'll make a motion to approve the design as presented, granting the variance for the sieve analysis and the 2-foot groundwater offset reduction.
I
we
second
have a
it.
motion and a second. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker,
And Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Gino Farrell, yes.
Matt Wason,
Now, Wilson, yes.
and the chair votes yes, unanimous. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Good luck on the project.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
You as well. All right. We are almost on time. It is 7:11. We have a 7:10 public hearing for 4 to 13 Air Road with Brian Carlson. I'm gonna promote Brian. Oh, sorry. We have a hand up in the audience. I'm going to bring them up. Yes, Mr. Avini.
Sorry, I think I just unmuted myself.
You are now unmuted. We can hear you, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. Attorney Avini, I represent Brian Carlson, Traditional Concepts, Inc. I think Brian signed it. I'm having some computer issues. I can't tell. Yeah.
He is here.
He's actually muted. So this is before you tonight for review of the escrow agreement. My understanding is town council has not reviewed the escrow agreement yet. There's also a homeowners association agreement for the common septic. So I'm just asking the board if we can get placed on the next agenda. We actually had a closing schedule for this week, but without the escrow agreement and the homeowners association being finalized, we had to push the closing out. We've got a young family with a disabled child that wants to move into the house. So I've got a little bit of a hardship issue going. So I'm just asking the board if we can try to expedite this. That would be very much appreciated.
I think that's certainly reasonable. We have not heard back from town council yet. Certainly that, the part of the reason for this is to protect the homeowners as well as the town in
Yes.
case of system failure. So we just want obviously to have town council be able to make sure that
Totally,
everyone is covered, including the community. So
totally
we
understood.
are happy to place you on the next hearing. I'm sure we'll have our answer from town council prior to then.
I
So
didn't-
we
I
will
didn't- I just
have
wanted-
our.
I
Okay.
didn't- I just wanted to chime in, Jim, just to let the board know that we are under a little bit of a time constraint here. But again, I just appreciate you hearing me, and I know you got other things on the agenda tonight.
Nope, we appreciate it. We hear you, and I apologize that we don't have, a response from town council at this point. But no, we're happy to place you on our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is July 26th.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Make
Thank
a
you very
motion
much.
for a continuance.
Looks like motion from Mr. Davis and a second from Mr. Baker. Roll call vote for continuing the hearing till July 26th. Kevin Baker. He was muted, but Baker
Baker
votes
votes
yes
yes.
for my lip reading skills. Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
Yes.
Matt Wason,
Now, Wilson, yes.
and the chair votes yes. The public hearing for 713 Air Road will be continued to July 26th.
And who will be following up the town council to make sure it's bird dogged and done by then?
I sent an email to Mr. Griffey asking that if he would get me town council's contact info, I can follow up, but I have not heard back as which town council has it. So I'll follow up with Mr. Griffey again tomorrow if that's okay.
That's okay with us and as a board. Matt, can I ask you, I believe you were CC'd on the email. You were not. I will forward the email string requesting town council consult If you would mind just following up on this, since I won't be here for our 26th meeting.
Yes, indeed.
I would appreciate it. That'd be great.
Apologize, making notes. All right, we're a few minutes ahead of schedule.
Thank
so
you,
we're
gentlemen.
gonna hold. Thank you very much, Mr. Ravini. Appreciate it.
You know, have a good night.
So I have 7:15. We have a 7:20 public hearing for 99 Hartwell Ave. So we're gonna hold off for a few minutes just to make sure that anyone who's interested in this hearing is able to be here at the posted time. Just to let folks know, Brenda is not on the meeting at the moment, but she is en route home and will get on as soon as she can. I'm trying to look back, see if there's some administrative matters we can handle while we are awaiting our 7:20. Like we have draft
Oh.
meeting minutes.
Oh, I was going to say, I'll take the opportunity just to ask a question about Neshoba and the announcement that they had about their nursing and hospice services. I haven't been here that long, but if I recall correctly, we as a town do not utilize those services or minimally utilize them.
I don't know what our volume is, so it's actually two separate nursing groups. So under the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health, they have their public health service nursing team who does the epidemiology, does clinics, does the public health piece of the clinical outreach, blood pressure clinics, COVID, that piece of it. The nursing services and hospice is a separate under their umbrella visiting nurse association model and hospice model, providing direct patient care beyond what is generally provided from a public health perspective. It is wound care for patients who need home care. For anybody who's ever been in the hospital and had to come home with IV antibiotics, that kind of teaching and support, as well as hospice care, obviously. So it sounds like that service is become untenable due to staffing resources and usually patient volume. They simply can't, there's not enough volume to support it and maintain viability, which is unfortunate. Certainly, I think here in Littleton, without doing a ton of research, we are slightly more urban than many of the other 31 communities who are part of Neshoba, that, you know, we have access to some other visiting nurse and hospice organizations that perhaps some of our more remote neighbors may have more limited access to. So I think impact-wise, it will probably have a minimal impact on our residents, but certainly within the Neshoba catchment area, it will probably have some impact for some patients, and it certainly is unfortunate, but it's an unfortunate sign of the times with staffing and staffing costs and maintaining volume. It's the business of healthcare. It's a hard one.
I guess it's more of I'm blind to the utilization of the services within our town. And so if it's nobody, then I have nothing to worry about. But if it's a number of patients, I understand that Neshoba is saying we will work with them over the next 30 to 90 days to make sure they're all transferred to another agency. But I just feel like perhaps just asking at least what our utilization is and how it's going, something that's maybe a little more personal and directed at Littleton specifically. Because I feel like the letter that came out was kind of pretty broad, and I'm sure they'll do a great job, but I also feel like we have a responsibility just to know what's happening for the people in Littleton.
I'm happy to reach out to Jim and see if they're able to provide a sense of, you know, how many cases or how many visits they do in our community, you know, under the two pieces of the VNA side and the hospice side, you know, for whatever window they can provide us, just so we have a sense of how big an impact it may be having.
Thank you.
No problem. I have 7:19, 7:20. There we go. All right, it is now 7:20. I'm going to open the public hearing for 99 Hartwell Ave. We should have. We have listed Kevin Ritchie from Civil Solutions, but I'm not seeing any other hands up in the audience for this one. It's a variance request for sewage disposal system upgrade design. Oh, looks like Kirk Fitzpatrick has his hand up. Folks, there we go. Mr. Fitzpatrick, are you here for 99 Hartwell?
I am. I apologize. When I joined as a panelist, it jumps me out of the Zoom meeting for a couple minutes.
It does kind of have a funny transition when you move. Absolutely. Sorry about that. Kind of scary. All of a sudden you disappear from everything.
No worries. Let me bring up the plan here. So I'm Kirk Fitzpatrick with Civil Solutions, and I'm here on behalf of Colin Pace and Ann Shea for their property at 99 Hartwell Avenue. I'll zoom in on the plan view here. So this is a proposed upgrade for the existing system, which is in a state of failure. It's an existing 3-bedroom home. It's actually a split level, and it's got plumbing in the basement, so the pipe comes out under the basement floor. It currently feeds a small tank here, and that goes down to a leach field in the side yard here. And this is pretty much the only flat spot on the lot. This is on the side of the hill on Hartwell Ave. It's fairly steep. And this is really the only area that's open and lawn. There's a garden area right behind where we're proposing to put the tanks. And then the elevation climbs continuously up to the backyard. It probably goes up another 30 or 40 feet, and it drops down another 30 or 40 feet to the road out at the front of the property. So we're kind of limited on where we could site the system. The driveway comes in the right side of the building, and the water line follows along the edge of the driveway down to Hartwell Avenue. So we tested adjacent to the existing leach field. We did test holes 1 and 2, and those 2 test holes showed some top and subsoil, and then changed to a sandy loam and had a water table at 42 inches and 48 inches respectively. We were able to run the perk test, and that ran at 3 minutes an inch. So what we're proposing to do is come out where it comes out now, do a 1,500-gallon 2-compartment septic tank, and then it's going to feed into a 1,000-gallon pump chamber, and then pump the liquid up to system composed of the Presby and Barrow septic. It's going to be 13.5 feet wide by 32 feet long. With the use of the Presby, we're requesting a reduction in the groundwater offset from 4 feet to 2 feet. This allows us to almost keep the system in the ground and maintain the grading without without installing either a wall or a polyliner. If we had a 4-foot offset, we'd have a very difficult time trying to catch this slope before it dropped off steeply down where I have the cursor. In addition, we're asking for local upgrade approval to allow less than a 12-inch separation from inlets and outlets of the tanks and the high groundwater. The septic tank and pump chamber are required to be ordered with rubber boots and risers to be sealed to the tops of the tanks. And they're probably 10 inches. The inverts are probably 10 inches above the water table, but it was close. We're requesting a local upgrade for that. And I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, before we start, we'll read again Jim Guereffi's notes. He is unfortunately not able to be here with us tonight. So 99 Hartwell Ave, the sewage disposal system for this site is in active failure. Sewage was discharged into the surface of the ground. Soil testing was conducted for the design of a replacement system, and a suitable location was found. The water table was elevated at 42 inches below grade. The approval of innovative alternative leaching areas by the DEP, in this case the Presby system, allows for designers to request up to 2-foot reduction in the offset between the groundwater and the bottom of the leaching area. The standard Title V offset is 4 feet. The designer is requesting a 2-foot reduction from the 4 feet offset to minimize the amount of breakout fill needed. The land slopes down to the road, and additional fill would require more trees to be cleared for its placement. The outlet pipes for the septic tank and pump chamber will not be 12 inches above the high water table, but the tank will be equipped with rubber boots to seal the outlet pipes and prevent water from entering the tanks. The site is served by town water, and there are no wetlands within the area of the system. I believe the design presented is a reasonable solution to address the situation listed. All right, we're going to go around the board. We'll go reverse order this time. Matt Wason, any questions, comments, concerns?
I guess it's hard to, yeah, I just have to kind of take what you're saying is that there's a lot of slope because we don't get a lot of elevation line beyond the area of the tank right there or the field right there. But is there an opportunity somewhere else where you could potentially use the Presby and then be only asking for a single variance because you'd be able to get that tank further away from the groundwater, do you think? Or no?
No, I really don't think so, and I think this is the best place to put it. It drops off. I mean, it's elevation 94 in the area where the tanks are, and less than 30 feet away, it's down to 86, and then it drops off even more steeply across the front. The old tank is closer to the house, and that has about 3 feet of cover on it. So we push the tanks further out into the lower area, and they'll have probably a foot and a half for cover on them. Both tanks are to be ordered to be monolithic and H20 loading. So I don't foresee any issues with the tanks.
And I know you said they were obviously, because right now I see it's between the 96th and 92nd kind of elevation lines there.
Yep.
And so I see this all, but the gap there is about the same as 90 to 86. But I also hear they're trying to preserve the trees that are obviously drawn down there. I guess my point is it's like it's similarly the same situation, kind of. I don't know where east on this drawing, up towards the other end of the house. It's steep hill up there above the 100-foot line.
Yeah, no, it climbs very quickly after the 100. The back of the house is a single story. So as you come around the yard, it's probably 102, 103 here. And then it's probably a 2-to-1 slope behind the house for another, it climbs 30 feet very quickly. And this area across here, you can see the contours kind of merge together. This is extremely steep, and it literally drops another 30 feet down to Hartwell Avenue, and it's all treed.
I
If
saw
you try to put the system down there, you're going to end up taking down trees. You don't have the plateau to work with, so you're going to end up bringing a lot more fill, and you're going to create some drainage issues by clearing all that slope.
And then ignorant question, but no concern about putting the Presby right on top of the old field location.
Nope, basically that old field will get dug out down to the clean material. That material will be trucked away, and it'll be replaced with clean Title V sand.
Okay.
Thank you, Matt. Gino Fratelloni, any questions?
How big is the land over there?
So it's 78,000 square feet, so about 1.75 acres.
Good size, good
It is a
size.
good sized lot, but it's extremely steep.
I know.
This is really the only plateau on the lot other than the driveway.
I got it, yeah. It seems, I don't see any problem. I wish him a lot of luck, that's it. And I hope everything goes well.
Thank you, Gino. Kevin Davis, any questions?
I don't have any questions, just a general comment. I appreciate the plan trying to keep that hillside there. This side of the hill gets a lot of water when it rains and stuff like that. When we get a lot of rain and whatever else, there's a lot of flow into the Hartwell Road there that the property butts. So I appreciate where you're trying to put this thing and squeeze that in. So yeah, it's going to be a very challenging lot, but no other questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin Baker.
Just one question, and I think you found the only place where you could put this thing. Does it make sense to consider some sort of drain on the east side of the leach field to try and direct some of the surface water that's coming off that slope, so it doesn't affect or shorten the life of that leach field?
I don't think it's it would impact I don't think the drainage across it's going to impact it. We're using a sloping Presby, so it still has some pitch across the top, so you shouldn't get any water flow or anything sitting on it.
Okay.
And the material actually we were amazed how pervious it was, being 3 minutes an inch. And
wow.
I think it would not be beneficial to try to channel the water, because then we got to find a place to put it. And it's, as Ken said, it's just going to keep going down that hill and cause issues downstream. So,
Thank you.
and that area, once it's all done, will be returned to lawn, which typically helps infiltration and slows the flow of the water.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. And the chair, certainly if anybody's familiar with this stretch of Hartwell, that's right near Gray Farm. If you know where there's that little pull off of Hartwell, basically a runoff of, at the bottom of a driveway in case you don't make it down the driveway and able to stop on an icy day, that is the house we're looking at, is across from that little pull off on Hartwell. So anyone who's been on that stretch realizes that's pretty much the high point of Hartwell, and it's a very steep. It is steeper than it looks on this plan. So again, I can't see many other options for this. I think this looks like a reasonable solution. I don't have any questions.
Yep.
I don't see any hands in the audience.
Sorry, one final clarification. You're asking for a reduction less than the 12-inch separation. What will it be?
So
You know?
they actually, the tank should meet the 12-inch offset. It's really the outlet of the pump chamber. It's probably going to be about 10 inches. Because we had a water table, 42 inches. The elevation of the tanks is going to be roughly the same as what the test hole was, so 91.3. We're coming in at the pump chamber at 92.33. So the outlet's just typically a hair lower than that.
Okay. I sometimes when I see those variances saying just, can it not be 12 inches? Then technically that means it could be any number, right?
Right. And now we
And I
got
like it to be a little more defined, just to be like, well, we're asking for this much of a offset change. So
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I don't see any hands in the audience for public input for this one. Any discussion among the board? Kevin Baker.
I'll make a motion to approve the plan as presented and grant the variance for the 2-foot groundwater offset, as well as having less than 12 inches from the inlets and outlets to the high estimated groundwater.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker.
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Peter Federlini.
Peter Ferroni, yes.
Matt Wason.
Matt Wason, yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion passes. You have your waiver for your work.
Great.
Good luck. We hope it goes well.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, it is 7:33. We're now going to open up our 7:30 public hearing for 1 Monarch Drive for request for a sewage local upgrade approval. I have Steve Gallagher listed. I'm promoting you now, Steve. One moment.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to ask that Pat Burke be, if he's on the call, that he be admitted as well, since he's the civil engineer who's designed this.
Being promoted as we speak. Mr. Burke, if you can hear us, you should have a, there you go. All right, once Mr. Burke comes on.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, it is up to you, Mr. Gallagher, who would like to present.
Well, I'll say a couple words just right off the bat, and I'll let Pat get into details. But you may be familiar with this project. This is the second time it's been before the board. This is a application for a replacement of a septic system on 1 Monarch Drive in Littleton. This is associated with the project that we're building to Monarch, the new industrial building directly next door. And this has been there's the plan there. So this has been a fairly long process, and I think fingers crossed for right at the end of it. And we are here because Jim, when he completed his review recently, informed us that we needed 2 additional waivers, which we didn't discuss in the first time that we were before the board, those being the 2 that are highlighted there at the bottom. So I'll let Pat talk about the details of those.
Yep, we're here to request 2 local upgrade approval waivers because of the existing system we're connecting to. One is the outlet inverts to be less than 12 inches above the high groundwater elevations. We tested last Friday to confirm the elevations with Jim Gareffi, and found them to be consistent with what we had thought they were before, so we could finalize the design. We're also requesting to reduce the cover to the system components for the tanks and the Septitech tanks system to be greater than 36 inches. What we're doing here, this is the system that we're tying into the existing CDK building. So we have an existing tank here that was set below grade. We have a slab foundation.
Mr. Burke, can I ask you to hold on one moment? No, sorry, Mr. Baker, you had your hand up.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Burke. We were told by our agent that you were going to confirm the depths of the tanks and that he was concerned the depth would be greater than 6 feet and you may have some trouble servicing them at that elevation. So I'm just curious, were you able to come up with that information regarding the depths of the tanks? Because our agent hasn't heard from it. And I don't know if you saw his notes. He recommended we continue this.
I did not see the notes. I don't think we need to continue. We're fine.
That'll be up to the board.
Yes.
Thank you.
The final system here, the cover over the tanks will be about 5 feet and with hatches to grade. So we're within the 72 inches that's allowed for the local upgrade approval.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
The system is deep. The reason being is we have an existing system that was constructed deep, which is actually greater than the 36 inches as built. So we came out of this existing tank at a minimum slope to our location of the Septitech tanks for alternative system. And when we got there, it's just out of necessity. We needed to keep the tanks as low as they could be to avoid pumping up to them, which would be practical. And the groundwater is below the inlet invert to the first Septitech tank. And the outlet invert's actually higher than the inlets through the system because it's a pump system. So we mainly need it for the 12-inch separation from groundwater for the inlet system here to the inlet tank.
Can I make a comment about the overall time? If you can hear me.
We can.
So it's a little unfortunate that Jim's not here, and it's unfortunate also that he didn't actually give us those comments directly so that we could have prepared to comment about them. I mean, he's aware that this is a very time-sensitive thing at this point. And, we were before the board back in March, and there was no reason that we couldn't have discussed this like a few months ago. So it's really getting, it's kind of unbelievable where the 6-month period of trying to get this permit. This thing has been exhaustively reviewed by a huge number of people at this point, including a whole separate peer review by the neighbors engineers, which was very exhaustive as well. And that's done now. So I think, we certainly will have a ton of eyes on this during construction, and we certainly will make sure that, Jim is there for all the inspections, that whatever he needs, we can look at. We've been very responsive. There's been a few rounds, each of which we thought kind of, I guess, wrongly was the last round of comments. The new comments have come later, which were not comments prompted by any changes we made in the design. They're just new comments based on the original design, essentially. So we're now at a point which I didn't think we were going to be at, which is that this has become a critical path item for this project, which we submitted this thing back in January. And I didn't imagine, I thought, just, it would be a normal process, maybe a couple of months, just if it's because it's a little bit longer, we might have to go to the board, but we did go to the board based on his original comments. We also did additional test pits based on his additional comments. And then we found out months later that we need to go back to the board a second time and that we had to do additional test pits a second time, you know, both of which we could have addressed in the earlier rounds back in February and March. So I would really, you know, we can put any kind of conditions that we want in order, you know, to make sure that everything is examined properly during construction. But I would really respectfully request that we close the hearing and that we be able to get this permit shortly, because, you know, it's just, we just have like, there's just no end to this process at this point. It's taking an unbelievable amount of time, and there's apparently no sense of urgency. And, you know, we're going to miss our deadline with this tenant at this point if we can't get this system going and get this construction started. So sorry to go on long, but that's kind of where we're at this point.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Baker?
Mr. Gallagher, just to confirm, did you have a different engineering firm draw this up initially and submit it to the board?
No, it was Pat's colleague, Sue, who spoke the first time, but Pat and Sue have worked on this the whole time.
Okay.
Like I
Sue's
said,
still on
Zenith
the-
Engineers.
Sue's still on the project?
Yeah, Sue's still on the project.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, I'm at Places Associates.
And this design really has not changed substantially. I mean, there's been an incredible amount of focus on various minutiae, you know, nothing wrong with that, but it's not like we redesigned it. And so there needs to be a whole new round of review based on this totally new design. It's been very minor adjustments, responses to comments, things like that.
I think what we'd like to do is get approval of the waivers if possible, and then we can address Jim's comments too. I don't think, we've been in contact with him throughout, so I don't think there's anything that would drastically change the design here that Jim couldn't approve.
At this point, I'm going to share Jim's notes for this, and then we're going to open it up to the board and the public. 1 Monarch Drive, the board has provided regulatory relief for the installation of a replacement system for this site. This past winter, as the property owner was working on the division of the property and the construction of a new building, the board granted a Title V variance to allow a replacement system to be located on another property, the lot on which the new building is being built. The plan for the replacement system was in draft form, and after some additional testing and revisions to the plan, the designer has provided a plan which is nearly ready for approval by the board. The current septic tank for the existing building is deep in the ground. The proposed new tanks will also need to be deep since they operate by gravity flow. Title V limits the amount of fill over the top of tanks and leaching area to be no more than 3 feet, but allows boards of health to increase the depth of cover. In this case of the replacement system, where there is no increase in design flow, from 3 feet to 6 feet. On Friday, we conducted testing to determine the groundwater in the area of the tanks to ensure the outlets would be above the high water table, and the discussion of the depth of cover was discussed. The engineer was going to get additional information regarding the existing tank and the elevation of the pipe exiting the building. I expressed concern the proposed cover may exceed 6 feet, and the depth of the system may make it difficult to maintain treatment systems in this tank. As part in these tanks, as part of the replacement, the system will treat wastewater. I have not heard from the engineer since our site meeting on Friday, so I think the request may be premature. I would recommend you continue the hearing until the engineer has had a chance to apply the new information to the plan and determine if and what extent this additional relief is needed.
So if I might comment just for a second, I have a couple quick thoughts there. So one is, I mean, the idea that it's premature, I kind of take issue at that. I think, you know, we could have responded to that if he had just sent us an email. I mean, he obviously wrote that up and sent it to you, but he just didn't tell us. So we could have prepared to speak on that tonight if he had just simply told us he had that concern, which we weren't aware of. The other is that concern, he could have told us that back in January or February, you know, so the fact that, you know, we're going back and forth in the middle of July. I mean, this is not based on an update and I take issue with the idea that those original plans were draft plans. They've been modified slightly based on his earlier comments, but they were full plans. And this particular issue, this question, could have been prompted by those original plans just as much as these updated ones. So it's just really unfortunate that we're here now, you know, talking about continuing this hearing, you know, for something that we could have talked to the board back, you know, early in the fall, in the spring, or that we could have corresponded with him back as early as January or February. And now we're going to get delayed further, apparently. And I'm not sure why he's not here to talk about it in person either, because he's very aware that this is a critical path item, not really being very helpful on timeline. Sorry to be confrontational. It's just that we're we're really under the gun now.
Well, we certainly understand that, and certainly if for us, if our agent has a question, we respect that question. We want it answered prior to granting any approvals. As far as Jim not being here, Jim is obviously our contracted agent, but he also provides services to the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health, covering 31 other communities as well, in conjunction with his team, so that there are times when he is not available on our scheduled meeting nights due to other conflicting meetings. So we certainly always appreciate having him here and would prefer having him here. If we had requested to have him here present, that would have pushed this meeting off for 2 more weeks, which it sounds like is not your goal. So having you here tonight really was the most expedient way to have you before the board and not have you hold off waiting for Jim to be available as well, which I think is one of your pieces. I apologize certainly if there was a difference of opinion on when this potential 6 feet of cover over the tank should have been identified in the plan. I'm not sure if it was originally on the plan. Was there on the original plan a depth?
The original plan showed those tanks right there. He could, I mean, and he gave us like multiple rounds of comments, which, by the way, he did not tell us were preliminary comments and that he was going to be doing additional rounds of comments. We all thought each time we got additional comments, okay, we're going to jump on these. These are the last ones. We'll respond. And then kind of, you know, you would respond, it would go into the ether for a few weeks and we'd say, you know, any update? Can we get the permit now? And then we would get a few random new comments dropped on us and we would jump on those and then a few more. And, oh, by the way, now you need to go back and do more test pits. Why couldn't we have done the test pits by those tanks when we did the first round of test pits that he told us to do? There's no reason. It's not from a change. It's just that he didn't get around to telling us that he wanted those until recently, you know? And so I appreciate the fact that you're in kind of a tough position. And I know I'm being a little bit confrontational and I'm not trying to be, but like, I'm under a lot of pressure, you know, with this tenant, you know, trying to get this building done on time. And again, could not have imagined when we submitted this permit that this was going to become a critical path item, but it is now. And so I would respectfully request that you do close the hearing and put any kind of conditions about requiring, obviously, you know, we are going to have inspections. Like I said, beyond what's normally done, the owner of One Monarch has their own separate civil engineer who's done a very exhaustive review, who's very good, who does public, you know, peer reviews for towns all the time. He's going to be looking at this too. There's going to be a ton of people looking at this during construction. So if you want to put any kind of conditions, you know, just to make sure that these comments are addressed during construction, we're totally on board. We'll do anything to, you know, respond to this, but it's just not going to work for us, unfortunately, to just continue this indefinitely. Because how do we know, you know, we're going to close the hearing in 2 weeks from now? I mean, maybe there'll be a new thing that comes up. I just have there's just no way to know how long it's going to take at this point, because we thought we were almost ready to get the permit like months and months ago, you know, at various times, and it just keeps going endlessly. So if there's anything you can do about like putting specific language in the approval, you know, to cover yourself, you know, again, we'll totally work with everyone on it, but I would really love to close this tonight.
And if I can speak towards the inverts for the septic tanks, I did reach out and got the cut sheets for the actual construction for the tanks this week from the manufacturer, and they do match what we have on the plans. So we're comfortable with those inverts.
Thank you. So the question I was originally to ask, and then I'm going to go open up to the board, if you don't mind. On those plans, did we have a depth of those tanks originally on the plan?
Yes.
We did.
Yep.
And what were they
I
originally?
believe it's in the profile. They were, it was greater than the 3 feet. It was about 5 feet. They haven't really changed too much.
All right, I'm going to open up to the board. Kevin Baker.
What is the distance above the groundwater for those inlets?
Going to be 2 inches.
2 inches?
Yes.
And will those tanks and pipes and boots all be rubberized? The special tanks
Everything's supposed to be, is, required to be waterproof. We've, put additional sealing on the outside of the tanks and provided boots to, make sure everything's waterproofed, watertight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin Davis.
Could you please describe on the plan where it shows specifically the ground, the depth of the tanks?
You've got the, top of tanks and the inverts, for the tanks here. The top of tank here is 227.78, 227.51, and the existing grade out there is around 232.
But there's nothing on the plans that show the amount of cover that is going to be over top of the tank. Is that correct?
It's shown on the profile.
Could you please show me where that is?
So here is the top of the tanks, and here is the finished grade or existing grade.
Okay. That's the existing grade. Is there a plan to do an as-built for the town?
Yes, we're going to be required to do an as-built.
The last time, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair. The last time that I recall this print came in, there was not a lot of talk about the area where the new leaching field was going to go, or the building, or any of that. Am I misremembering the last time this was brought before the board?
I would have to go back and look as well.
I can show
Well,
you.
yeah, just to jump in on that, the reason these items were presented, were shown on the plans that was originally presented to the board, it's just that Jim didn't make the comment at the time that we needed to discuss these things or seek approval for these things. We could have discussed it at the time if he had identified.
So I'm remembering correctly that the last time this was before the board, this was an item to be completed in the future, and that this would be brought back before the board at a future time when it was ready to be brought back.
I don't know, Pat, you might have to weigh in on that. That's not my recollection.
I didn't attend the original hearing, but I thought we were complete.
Yeah, that was certainly my understanding.
Pardon me if you don't mind if I interrupt. I believe Sue brought it to us preliminary to get feedback on crossing the property line with the system. We told her everything looks okay. Come back to a meeting. We'll have a public hearing and we'll put it out there. And we agreed to allow that. And that's the last we heard. We haven't seen anything since. So this is our first.
Okay, well, if we would come back the next week if we had been told that we need to do that. I mean, we've had these drawings ready to go long before this.
Well,
I got on the agenda as soon as we confirmed that we needed to do so based on.
Yeah, and I remember when the testing happened. I think maybe a member of the board went down and walked the property or did some sort of safety.
I know I asked to be included in that, and nothing was ever done for that. So this is the first time I'm seeing, a drawing that's saying, hey, Mr. Board, you need to kind of take a look at these things and understand what's going on. So I'm sorry you have such a tight schedule, but this is the first time we're seeing this.
Okay. I mean, it wasn't really a tight schedule,
and it was an emergency and everything. Last time we talked about this plan, there was an emergency and a tight schedule too, because you had to cross an electric line with a pipe, and we get it. Schedules are schedules, and time is money.
I mean,
we also have to go through the right channels and do things the right way.
One at a time, gentlemen, please. One at a time.
Right.
So I'm sorry you have an interaction, as the chair had already stated, with the Neshoba Boards of Health. We're not going to redact that, but again, this is the first time the board is seeing this, so your timeline of 6 months is off. Just want to have that on the record, because this is the first time we're seeing this. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Gino Fratelloni, any questions?
Jim made any comment?
We'd read through them and he actually recommendation was to continue the hearing. He had concerns about the depth of coverage over the tanks of potentially greater than 6 feet, but wanted to see exact plans and
Why don't we ask Jim to come back so he can see this? There's a beautiful project, and I don't know why we give him so much trouble. But maybe.
He
we'll
has
come-
seen these plans. I'm
Pardon me?
sorry. Yes, we sent them to him last week. And he never made any comment to us on them, including the comments he's given to you that we're just hearing about now.
Yeah, this
He
way I
could have
was,
told us about that.
you know,
and we would have
in order
been
to
prepared
convince
talk about
the,
it.
in order to convince us, it'd be nice if he comes and maybe next week you can be here again. But I don't see why you have to come back. I mean, I know where the building is, a beautiful building, and they 8,000 gallons for those tanks. I can't believe it. There's a lot of water in there. Good job.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow, I guess.
That's okay. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful building. I seen
Thank you.
okay, thank you, Gino. Matt Wason.
Yeah, I pulled up the plans that we looked at back in March. And they are decidedly different plans. Parts of them are hand drawn. And they show one of the tanks at, it looks like a depth of almost 7 feet to the top. So I can only assume that some more refined measurements have happened since then, since you're no longer showing quite that amount of depth.
Just to clarify, the hand-drawn plans, I believe, are the as-built from the 80s. So you probably had those along with the plans we submitted, but those aren't the plans we submitted.
Yeah, the plans we submitted were complete.
They're all in CAD. And they showed,
As I said, these are the plans that were submitted. These are the plans that were reviewed when Sue came to the meeting in March. That's what I'm looking at. So
I think she submitted the as-built as a supplement to the plans that were submitted. Well, I know she did, but the hand-drawn plans, just to clarify, the 1980s as-built of the original building.
okay, so those tanks exist right now?
The tank nearest to the building exists. That's the original tank.
No, the two tanks.
tanks.
The two tanks.
The two tanks below that in plan are the new tanks that are part of the new
Okay,
system.
well, I'm looking at a drawing with two tanks, so I believe that's something new.
So the hand-drawn plans that show two tanks include a septic tank, which is that highlighted tank at the top, which we're keeping. And Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, they include
Yes.
an additional tank, which is identified on that plan as being abandoned as we abandon it and then reconnect to the new tank.
Is this the plan you're looking at?
That's one page of it. Yep.
That is the original design and as-built plan.
So it's rotated 90 degrees, but you
So
can see
scroll
the original
down to
tank
where
there.
there's showing the elevation of the tanks. No, it's not on this page of the drawing. I have multiple pages. So if you're saying that's what we're referring to.
Yeah, so you can see the original tank there close to the building, which we're keeping, and we did just inspect per Jim's request. The second
That
tank.
drawing right
is-
there, that's an as-built. That top left box, you have your magnifying glass, that's an as-built.
Those are plans for the 1980s from the original building.
Yes.
Those are not the new plans that we submitted. They were we included them as a supplement because we're connecting to the original
Okay.
tank.
So just wanted to confirm then. So we've effectively not seen these plans because this is all we were given back in March.
That's
Sorry about
not correct. With respect, that's not correct. I was there at the meeting. The new plan was shown on the screen and Sue walked through it. This is not the only plan that was submitted, and it was the plan we submitted was shown on the screen during the meeting.
But I will say that shown on screen is different than submitted to the board.
They were submitted to the board too. All the septic plans were submitted to the board.
Okay, we had a couple pages, but we did not have it's not as much as you've provided today. So that's why I'm trying to just recall what we reviewed. Because it is true, the minutes say that all we were talking,
What's the proposed septic system at the bottom?
the minutes just talked about, as I think Dan mentioned, it was about crossing the property line.
See there, that's the plan we submitted. That's right. You can see those two tanks right there.
That's the plan.
Those
for
look like they're different locations in the plan you're looking at today.
Correct. We shifted the location slightly as part of the, in response to some of the comments to, get it further away from the building, but it's not a meaningful difference in the.
And also, it also looks like in the leaching field area, the maintain existing, right near the maintain existing erratic that's there. It doesn't look like that's in the corner unless I can't see it, maybe because my screen's so small, but, yeah, okay, there it is.
Yep.
Yeah, so the way it was presented the last time, this was quote unquote still in flux, and it was just it was something that would be brought before the board in the future tense. So attitudes really need to shift here a little bit. The minutes kind of back up our recollection.
All right. Well, I guess I'm not trying to be confrontational or anything, but our source of frustration is just that it seems like there's just no clarity on when the process will end. And every time we get any instruction from anyone, it feels like we jump on it immediately. We have everyone do everything to respond to everything. We submit it. And then there's just this void of uncertainty that continues indefinitely. And there's no clarity on when it will end. I'm not sure if it's going to end next time. I'm not sure if it's going to go on multiple times. There might be new comments that we haven't heard about yet, and we'll respond to those when they come. But we're just gonna, our tenant's gonna break their lease at a certain point. We just have to end this at some point. So I'm struggling to figure out a way to do that. We're at the 6-month mark now, and again, I know that you didn't have this presented to you a while ago, but we would have presented it a while ago if Jim had told us to. We would have come right back. So it's. I got to figure out how to just end this process somehow, and anything we can do to end it, we will. But, I'm sort of at a loss at this point.
Okay, I'm going to go to Mr. Baker, and then I have a comment. Mr. Baker.
Mr. Chair, I was just wondering if you were finished taking comments from the board. I was prepared to make a motion, but please make your comment.
Sorry, I believe I'm the only one left. Again, my recollection as well was our original approval was an approval in concept, that this was basically allowing a system on a different piece of property for one piece of property. So it was really an approval in concept. Was that even a possibility? And that we granted that. I have a number of questions, and I'm certainly disappointed that you are so upset about this. I certainly understand the pressure you're under. I am disappointed that you feel the need to express it so strongly to the board. We are here to both support our developers and our community, but also to protect our residents and maintain our legal requirements. I do have one concern or question. So certainly with any of your professional engineers, we recognize that Title V has a requirement that you can't put a tank below 3 feet without a waiver. That while even if we take everything else, that even if Jim never told you that you needed a variance for that, I would hope a professional Title V engineer working on a project of this scope would be able to recognize that a tank below 3 feet would require a waiver of Title V to be acceptable, and that it would not require our health agent to notify you that you need a variance for that. That is basic engineering practice, and I would think that would be a pretty straightforward. Never mind anything else in the project. You seem to be hung up on this, and I understand why, but I just need to bring that out as the example that we're looking at, that the level of surprise that this would come up and have to have a discussion, and that none of your engineers would recognize that would require a variance, again, is a little bit concerning for me as a board member. It brings, I'll be honest, and we'll share some back, that if that wasn't recognized as a need for a variance, again, very, very clear Title V requirement of what other pieces of this design plan may also require variances that a qualified engineer should recognize pretty clearly and quickly, are also not being addressed or shared, that either are aware and not being shared, or not aware, the engineers are not aware of the requirements, and therefore they're being recognized as the plan moves along by our agent. I don't see any hands in the audience from the public. If we have any other comments from the board? Mr. Baker.
I was just prepared to make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the variance for the depth of cover not to exceed 6 feet, to be confirmed, reviewed, and approved by our health agent, Jim Gariffi, as well as allow the distance above the groundwater for the inlets and outlets to be less than 12 inches.
We have
I
a
second.
motion on the floor.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion and second?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I'm really uncomfortable with just going and granting the waivers right at this moment in time. Just the motion without any other discussion about what other things with our health agent about what might be in the construction that may need to be required to check back in and things like that. Because basically, once we approve these things, the point that you brought up, Mr. Chairman, about the engineers not like, if that's a standard Title V thing in a variance within the town, that they weren't aware of those things. I'm very concerned about the construction and moving forward of this. The other thing that I'm very concerned about before we go and do this is also I didn't hear before, that there's a 2-inch separation between the water and the outlets. That's really low. But yeah, that's, as far as the motion goes, I'm concerned about that.
Any other discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing
If I'm
none,
able
we
to
have a
speak,
mo-
I just wanted to just mention that, as I said, the neighbors did have a full peer review done by Zenith Engineers, which was pretty exhaustive. Just
That's great. I'm so
peace of
happy.
mind. It's a second engineer that looked over the whole thing.
Thank you. All right, any other comments, discussion from the board on the motion on the floor? All right, roll call vote. Kevin Baker,
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis votes no.
Gino Federlone,
Yes.
Matt Wason,
Oason, no.
and the chair votes no as well. We do not grant the variance at this time as requested for 2-inch offset from the ground high water for outlet pipes and the greater than 3 feet cover over the tanks.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Do we have the ability to reach out to an independent engineer to review this very complicated set of plans?
That is an excellent question, Mr. Davis. I certainly know in past boards I've served on, we have had a peer review engineer for just such cases. This is certainly beyond a 3-bedroom
Honey.
split where you're trying to do a system. I do not know if we have that as a resource. We will, I will explore that with our town administrator, town council, and Jim Gareffi as well. I think that would probably be a useful tool if it is at our disposal.
Honey, what are you?
I will say on behalf of the board, certainly that plans can be reviewed and can be resubmitted.
Could I just ask to clarify what's being requested that we bring back next meeting?
We haven't
At the
gotten-
moment,
Sorry,
at the
go ahead.
moment, you have come forward with 2 waiver requests and they have been denied. So at this point, it is in your court of what you would like to do about your plan. I think the board has expressed some concerns. I think reasonably so.
If I may, I don't have sufficient information from our health agent to support the variance request that you've requested. So it potentially may not need a change in your plans, but I need to have our professionally applied health agent review those and give us a professional opinion. And if that is a suggestion of even like people were saying, a secondary engineering review, then that may be the case. But we're a board that has to lean on the expertise of those other folks, and I don't feel supported by that. So like I said, may not be anything has to change, but I need more professional input provided to me personally.
Fair enough. So it's at least possible that we could come back in 2 weeks and he could be here and he could come in. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Sorry, I'm just taking a quick look so I can return you to our audience. Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Burke. Hey, Matt, if you wouldn't mind taking a look. Or Dave, if you're still on, if you're able to help us move them back to the audience or allow them to depart, that would be appreciated. Thank you, sir. All right, it is now 8:11. We're at our 7:40 discussion around the code of conduct proposal. We brought it up at our previous meeting, looking at the select board as a model. And has anyone had any further opportunities to review any other input regarding one, the need for a code of conduct as the board, and any comments or edit suggestions or thoughts about modifications to the select board code of conduct as our starting point?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment or two.
Of course, Mr. Davis, go ahead.
I think this is a really great starting point for us. I think there are some modifications that need to be made to it. One modification that I would want to have a possible code of conduct is a conflict of interest statement that's in there maybe. I don't remember one being in there. Correct me if I'm wrong.
3D
has
decide it by saying conduct themselves to maintain public confidence in the local government and their performance of the public trust.
Because I had a headache the first time.
So I think if we maybe strengthen that a little bit and talk about conflict of interest or something like that, if it comes up before the board, I understand. My interpretation of what was said there is it's very broad, and I don't think it goes into a conflict of interest statement there. I mean, but I might, correct me if I'm wrong. That's probably my biggest comment that I have on this whole thing.
Mr. Baker.
I think that might be overlapping a little bit with open meeting law as far as conflict of interest goes. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sure would be good to put a note in there specifically calling that out. I don't know what the verbiage or the language is, but it seems appropriate.
Can I ask what you mean by that, about an overlap or conflict between open meeting and conflict of interest?
Oh, no. Well, there's the open meeting law calls out conflict of interest for members in a meeting, saying they should recuse themselves should there be any issue. Sorry, just want to clarify that.
Nope. Okay, thank you. No, I hear you now. Certainly.
sorry, the only other note I had on this was that I feel like the ramifications or the consequences need to be something stronger than public censure. And I don't know what the pathways are to remove a board member that's voted into office.
I would have to do some more research as well, but I'm not sure there is.
Okay.
But short of a recall election, which I'm not sure if we have recall language in our town charter or town bylaw. I will be honest, I simply don't know. And I am glad to say I've never had reason to go look at our town bylaw or charter to see if we have recall language in there. So that's a good thing, but
I'll send the information on open meeting to you, Dan, so you can forward it.
thank you. Is it the pleasure of the board to continue working on a code of conduct, a set of ground rules that shows that what our expectations are as far as behaviors as members and representatives of our community?
Sure. I think if there's something not in place, we should certainly put something in place. What would be even better if the town in general put something in place for all elected officials or all members of all boards, so we don't have to recreate the wheel and no one else does either.
I second
great
that.
idea.
I think this should be, I second that. I think this should be something that we feedback through Mark, our representative, and say this should be an elevated issue. There should be a general set of code of conduct for the entire town, and then the boards can add additional things to it. I really like that idea, Kevin.
I would say we're our own board, so we should be within our realm to establish the code of conduct we want to adopt.
Yeah, agreed. But I think that's something we should definitely feed back to Mark and say, hey, I think the town should have something like this, and then the board can sit there and say we adopt what's there to town, strike items 17, 5, a million, and whatever else, right? And I like that, but I agree with you too.
So a code of conduct and then code of conduct and then an addendum, something like that. So a rider to the.
But I'm not going to say, hey, let's table this and wait for the town to do something, right? No, but yeah. I say, keep moving forward with this and do that. But I really like that idea.
To say personally, not speaking for anyone other than myself, I would not be surprised if the town gets to that point at some point where we have kind of a boilerplate code of conduct. Certainly each elected board is independent and does not necessarily report to or under the auspices of any other elected board. So I think having a townwide mandated code of conduct would be challenging to enforce for elected officials, since simply the structure of the elected boards are. But I agree of having a townwide accepted boilerplate where individual boards may have differences, for a few items, obviously, who the communication lines are and direct reports, those pieces. But a boilerplate would obviously be consistent and have set an expectation for all board members, residents, and employees of the town of what our ground rules are. And I agree that would be a great place, but unfortunately we're not there yet. I think I wouldn't be surprised in the year or two that we are, but nope, this is great. I think we can continue with this. I have not gone through and reworked it to Board of Health specific. If anyone wants to take a stab at, going through and most simply changing the language of select board to Board of Health and removing the obvious, like the police chief and fire chief, please feel free and bring it back to us. If not,
I nominate Kevin Davis.
Sure, I'll take it.
I will put it on the share for us under an administrative folder. Does that work for you?
Yeah, sure. As soon as I log into the administrative stuff, but yeah. I'll put that as a priority, and that's a forcing function to go get that done.
All right. And I would, just as a matter of business, and certainly Kevin Baker brought up the open meeting law, that it can be there so if somebody can work on it and then share it back to the group for discussion. Please try to avoid conversations within the document around pieces that could potentially be considered an open meeting violation if we're discussing it electronically behind the scenes in the document. So
Correct. You make your proposed edits, and then we look at that document during the meeting, and that is our time for discussion and then deciding on an answer.
Agreed.
exactly.
Agreed.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You'll make
Matt.
the first round of those edits that we ideally can all go down and say, yes. Now let's talk about the meat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So nobody put any comments on it, and I'll make some changes and things like that. And then people can, make additional comments that we record in the meeting into the document.
Great. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
No worries. I got it. I got
right.
our backs.
We appreciate your dedication. All right. It is 8:20. We have our 750 ID decision support tool discussion. I'm going to stop sharing. Sorry.
Okay, you got it?
Got it.
Yes.
This is our new and hopefully improved infectious agent decision support tool, which is now not as focused on just COVID-19. So what I've done is built in some categories, and I'll scroll through quickly so you get an overhead of the various infectious agents that we deal with periodically throughout the year, as well as obviously if we were going to add something unexpected. So just at the top, concerning agents right now, the only thing that's on our radar is COVID-19. I have a section for community restrictions, which currently there are none, but right, nothing's going on, so there are no restrictions. So I'm going to leave that collapsed. Here's our latest COVID-19 information. Good news and bad news. Lots of variants out there right now. The ICU bed access is still, below 80%, so we're better about that. This piece, the CDC community level, is gone as of May 11th. And unfortunately, the up-to-date vaccinations is also gone as of May 18th. So we are without a lot of the data that we used to have. So I can't really replace the CDC community level. That one's gone. And the vaccinations, unfortunately, the CDC was doing a good job of defining up-to-date vaccinations, which means you had to have a bivalent vaccination from this most recent round, like last fall. And they reported that at the county level, which was helpful. But since that has gone by the wayside, now all that is reported is Massachusetts is reporting. The CDC has Massachusetts level data, which I could put here. We're probably not far from the average across the whole Commonwealth. But unfortunately, Massachusetts itself does not report up-to-date vaccinations still. They're still only reporting people who've gotten any booster ever, which is not the best definition of are we well vaccinated in our community. So I kind of pitched it out there. We can take it off, or we can report the CDC's data that says at a certain level for Massachusetts. And I think that's going to be only updated monthly, but it's better than nothing. Or is it?
I kind of like having at least that data on here so that we know what's going on, because if it gets worse, then we need to start letting people know and start doing a public outreach like we've done in the past.
Yeah.
So I think that's a necessary piece of data. The other thing to think about is, as a board, do we want to ask the Massachusetts Department of Health to update us on when they plan on keeping their website up to date, or did that get removed once the emergency declaration was rescinded completely? So,
right.
We do have that channel open that we can kind of go up to them and say, hey, what's going on? And try to see if we can get more data from them.
they're still reporting their general data that they have been. They're just continuing to report the vaccination data in a very, very outdated definition that I asked them to update at least a year ago. But I think it's worthwhile. We can pursue that and see if they would be willing to at least keep us up to date with some more fresh data.
Yeah. Maybe also reaching out to the policy person at the Massachusetts MPH.org. I forget what it is. Massachusetts Organization of Public Health, whatever, or boards or whatever. Remember that board, the guy that came in during the pandemic to kind of talk about what was going on at the state level? I think his name was Michael.
Yeah, Mass
Sure, I
Association of Health Boards.
Yeah, I can look
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah. So maybe if we reached out to them as a forcing function as well to say, hey, look, we're trying to make really good decisions. You know, is there any way that you can influence what's happening at the state level? Because apparently they're attending the state level meetings with the, you know, the director and stuff like that.
I can go the Department of Health route. Does somebody else want to take the other route?
I can reach out to the Mass Association of Health Boards.
Thank you, sir.
Cool. And then continuing, I've added the arbovirii, as it were. So Triple E and West Nile, those are both reported for Massachusetts by county. So I added that as I feel like that's an informational piece that, again, these are things that can exist in our community. Right now, our risk is low, so there are no reported cases of either an insect or a person that has been positive for those diseases this summer so far. So I will leave that closed, but I feel like that's something we can continue to report on. And then lastly, started to add it in the fall, influenza and RSV. So I'm going to tack those on at the end. So that's kind of what I built out. So we have a little more sectioning, at least for our monitoring purposes. And then when things get turned yellow or red, then we can kind of discuss more about that. So open to suggestions, changes, whatnot. I can email this out to, but it's also on our OneDrive, so you can look at it. Or if there's something else that you think we should add, another section, happy to do so.
First, I think those are great additions and certainly things that, you know, are potentially challenging in our communities as we look at, you know, flu and RSV, especially as for volumes, and Triple E and those things for severity. So this is really helpful. Any other comments from
Sorry, I did skip over. The wastewater numbers are actually both below 200 for the first time since about February or March of last year. So I really like to see those numbers drop that low, but sorry, that was my last piece.
All right. Any other comments from the board or questions for Matt about the ID tool? All right, Matt, as always, thank you for keeping this up and adding those other pieces to it that we definitely want to be keeping an eye on. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Administrative matters. We have 3 minutes before us at the moment that were shared out on Friday from Brenda. I'm going to start with I'm surprised that we hadn't cleared these off. We have minutes for August 24 of 22 and September 14 of 22. Certainly some time ago now. You know, so hopefully that should be the last ones who are caught up. I know the expectation is minutes are out within 30 days. So this is unfortunately not there, but this should hopefully catch us up. I will be honest, I've not gone back and watched the videos for these meetings. So it's a bit of memory for this far back. Has anyone had a chance to review those 2022 meetings minutes and have any comments, questions, or concerns for them? Mr. Baker.
The September 14th, 2022 minutes look okay to me, but Jim's name is spelled Garvey or Gravy on the first page, about halfway down. Other than that, everything looks pretty thorough on those. And the August minutes, while in a different format and not as thorough, also look okay to me.
Anyone else have any comments or questions about our 2022 minutes? All right, I'll accept a motion for those two as a package.
I'll make a motion to approve the August 24th, 2022 and September 14th, 2022 minutes with the correction of Jim Griffey's name on the front page of the September 14th, 2022 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Kevin Baker,
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis,
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Gino Fratelloni,
yes,
Matt Wason,
Matt Wason, yes.
and Dan Kane votes yes. So those 2 minutes have been approved. We also have a document from June 28th, which appears to be very rough notes.
Those are Kevin's
Um,
notes, I think, that he sent to Brenda.
Okay.
I
So
was gonna, I don't think we should be publishing those as the accepted minutes at all.
Not even a draft.
No.
I would agree that we don't even have, it's the Board of Health and who is present, even the basic kind of structure yet. So I would ask Brenda if you wouldn't mind taking a look at the minutes and the video and see if you put it into our standard language or
Those are-
standard structure format. So for board,
Yeah,
for
those-
meeting minutes.
Yeah, those are kind of how Kevin creates notes for himself. So that's my
Nope.
kind of like consciousness of thought.
Nope, that is absolutely fine. We appreciate it. We appreciate you took those notes for us to help clarify what our discussions were. So no, we appreciate that. Brenda, if we can ask you to reformat those and just clarify any questions for us into our standard
Absolutely.
language. That would be great. Thank you so much. So we're going to continue the approval for those minutes of June 28th to our next meeting of 7/26, 2023, as long as Brenda is able to get to that with her workload. At this point, we're at correspondence and updates, public input, anything else. So we're going to kind of combine those and we'll work around the table. Kevin Baker, go ahead.
Just wanted to make a note. If I recall correctly, at our last meeting, we were discussing a property at 37 Dogwood, and we gave them 2 weeks, and specifically, I think, named tonight when they'd be returning to our meeting on our agenda. And I'm curious why it didn't make it on, and if it should be on, how we can help make sure this sort of thing doesn't happen in the future.
Because I think we did leave it open that as long as Jim approved, had inspected, approved, and everything was met, then we were good. But we have not gotten notes from Jim saying that he's been back, he's visited, and the boxes have been checked. So agreed. I'm not sure either why Jim's note saying we're all good, or if not, why they didn't present back with an agenda item for why some items may not have been completed. I will follow up with Jim. And check the status and see if we need to bring it back for the 26th. Okay. Any other members have any comments or anything? I do have one item, but we'll work the table first. We look like we lost Mr. Davis, unfortunately, but any other updates, correspondence, discussion from any of the members? All right. I was contacted by Human Resources a few days ago about the grading of the health director position. So the position had been graded by Human Resources. It went before the, I apologize, they've changed the name 3 times, I think, since they've changed their structure. The Personnel Review Committee, the Personnel Committee, the Personnel Board.
Advisory.
Thank you. I apologize. Last week, and the position was graded. 4 members of the board were there. They went through their grading tool line by line to see where it graded. 1 member graded at a grade 15. 2 members graded it at a 16 and 1 member graded it at an 18. How the tool is scored is done by Human Resources in a spreadsheet that I was not able to see. I did not get to see either the grading tool or the calculation weighting system that is utilized to come up with their final grade system. But it averaged out among the 4 members to a grade 16. As part of the process, the HR director reached out and said that in general, for any new position, once it is graded, it goes before the select board to approve basically the creation of a new position and its grade. And we were asked for a letter from the department head describing the need for the position and supporting it. Obviously, we don't have a department head. That's what we're working on. So as chair, it came to me, which is perfectly fine. I shared earlier today an incredibly rough first draft of a letter to the select board. Again, it's half a page. Certainly we could spend 20 pages describing why the value, the need, and the rationale for the position and grading. It's a little short and sweet. I am happy to have anyone pull out their favorite red pen or their favorite green pen. I was a teacher too long. Always use green or purple, never red. Add, subtract, support it. They did request it by, I believe, next week. So it could be in the packet for the select board for the following Monday. So not a huge amount of lead time, but enough. So my gist is basically why we think it's important, just describing the value that Neshoba obviously brings to us in our town, but recognizing the limitations of their staff and resources, that there are places where they are unable to meet the needs, the regulatory and statutory needs of our community, not for any fault of their own, other than it's simply outside of their scope and what they offer. And I did talk about the grading position that is currently graded as 16. As we look at other departments in town, I don't have it open at the moment. A grade 16 is consistent with many other department heads in town: Parks and Rec, the highway supervisor, the building inspector, some of those other positions. Grade 17, I believe it is the only position that would be graded at, it's 16. 17, there are no positions listed in a set at, I apologize. I'm not even reading my own notes. It's been a long day. I apologize. The only positions currently at grade 17 are the deputy police chief and the deputy fire chief. And while those are graded positions, both of them are contract positions, so they don't actually fall into the pay grade system. It's by contract negotiation. So I added that while it is, and grade 18 is the DPW director. Or director of DPW, I forget the exact title, is the only grade 18 position. And then we get to police chief, fire chief, and town administrator at, I think, at 22 off the top of my head. So I did make a discussion point of, while it was graded at a 16, it is a unique position that may not have been adequately covered using the grading tool, which covers every position in town from seasonal lifeguard at Long Lake right through the town administrator. That grading tool is potentially not quite subtle enough to address every position in the way it might best be addressed. Certainly looking at the nature of the health director, where it is obviously a department head, but it's also a master's degree level position, which many other positions similar or do not require that level of education. It is an inspector position, it's an enforcement agent, it's an educator, but it also requires 24/7 availability for public health and public safety emergencies. Certainly even this weekend, I was not working, but I had my radio on that we had an incident, nothing life-threatening, but at one of our local businesses, which required the building inspector, the electrical inspector, and a health agent to respond. And in that case, it was, late afternoon. I think it was on Saturday or Sunday. And that level of responsibility is certainly a little bit different than most other department heads, as far as, a phone or a pager going off and expect to respond. with the deputy police chief and fire chief, obviously the risks associated with the positions are much higher than a health director. On the other hand, they don't have final say. They are not actual department heads other than interim or intermittent department heads. And they are graded at an 18. So I think a 17 is not necessarily unreasonable, but I'm not sure what the flavor or the will of our board or the will of the select board would be to change the grade to a position if it's already worked through HR grade and it's consistent with the personnel board's grade. So, Mr. Baker, go ahead.
Well, first off, Dan, I just wanted to say I read your letter, and I don't think it's as rough as you think it is. I think it was well written. There are a couple things I think that we should probably somewhere in that document reference the town vote by the residents of Littleton back in June of 2021 at town meeting, allowing the Board of Health to go ahead and take whatever necessary actions it sees fit to move forward with leaving the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health. I think that's a great preface to requesting a job grade of 17 for this position. I also do believe the select board feels the rubric that the PAC is using is outdated and doesn't take into consideration many of the factors that we're discussing about this position. So I feel like that ask is totally appropriate, and I stand behind it 100%. I'm happy to take a look at that letter and use a green pen or green typing and get it back to you maybe Monday.
Okay. I will say I will do my best to work on it. I leave tomorrow for West Virginia. So
That's right.
the next few days are going to be a little bit tight, and then I open up a little bit starting on Thursday. So I have to double check and see what Michelle's turnaround time was for her to get back. But I will do my best to, if anybody are able to get some comments back to me by midday tomorrow, I'll try to finish that up and get that out before I head out tomorrow afternoon. So
if that's the timeline, I'll send it over. Thank you.
sorry. And if not, then we can certainly hand it off to others to finish the polish and share back with Michelle for the board, for the select board.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Wason, I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, so I was just the process that we were appraised of last time we went through the PAC was they would come up with a recommendation, and we would take it to the select board and say, this is the recommendation from the PAC, and this is what we're asking for, and those two numbers do not have to be equal. But Michelle respectfully requested that if they're not going to be equal, that we need to be talking to her in advance to make sure we just are all on the same page. I appreciate your work on this quickly. At the same time, if we need to wait for the next select board meeting, I think that's fine, right? There's no need to really shove it through if it's not right, I think. But if we're ready, great. I would say the letter's great. I would say the letter could be even shorter, because to Kevin's point, I think all we have to say is this board has been asked of this board by the voters who approved leaving Neshoba. Therefore, we need to establish Department of Health, and this is the first person to hire, period. We can talk more about backing up why we feel it's a grade 17, which I also agree. I think it should be a grade 17. I don't have the actual list, but when I was told who the people were at the grade 16 level, I felt that the responsibilities for this role seemed to be just higher across the board in terms of expectations, the public face side of it, what the responsibilities would be. So I agree. I think we should ask for a 17 and short and sweet on the letter. I would appreciate.
All right. I just pulled up Michelle's email again. I apologize. So yeah, she was requesting back to by the 19th, so it would be on the 7/24 select board meeting.
And actually well, that was my other question is, since we've just had meetings about who does what, if a department head is supposed to write the memo to the select board about the needs for this position, then is this not something for the town administrator to write?
But we're back to that whole piece of, and we are the appointing authority, and I would hope we'd be part of the hiring process, but I'm with you. I'm with you. Because theoretically, every position in town falls under the town administrator, except for the town administrator, the police chief, and the fire chief, who fall directly under the select board.
Right. And we were
So-
told this position would be in that bucket with everybody else. So perhaps the right thing is this, yes, Dan, finalize our draft, but then I feel it needs to go over to Ryan for
I mean, I certainly, it can be a package that Ryan
carrying
as town
that
administrator
forward.
and Board of Health on our behalf, and our thoughts as the appointing agent, and the board with the authority that, this agent would wield, having input of where that should fall as well is probably not unreasonable. I can reach back out to Michelle and see if we can push it off again. Our urgency is there, but it certainly is not the same as it was 3 months ago. So see if they can push it off until the following meeting, which should probably be the 31st, without looking at my calendar. Assuming the Monday night. Yeah, probably the 31st of July, if we want a little bit more time to make sure we're clear of the expectations and rationales and work with town administrator. Kevin Davis is back. Welcome back, sir. Your hand is up. We saw you bumped off, but we're glad you're back. It's all yours, sir.
Oh, no worries. I was just making sure I was in the panel versus in the audience. But my comments on this, sorry for dropping off. The hotel network dropped, so the son of being on the road. So I guess my big thing with this is I'm going to pile on to what Matt was talking about earlier. I think there are some clarification issues that need to be sent forth and adjudicated appropriately, because this is getting kind of nuts. Over.
Oh, okay. So what action would you like us to, or what are your thoughts of next steps for this request for a letter supporting the position and grading?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's I would agree with what Matt was saying. So that's why I said I was piling on with Matt.
Okay. So it sounds like the will of the board is we will work on our rationale both for supporting the need for the position as well as our recommendation around grading. I will request from Michelle if we can perhaps hold this off until the 31st select board meeting, which would mean it probably have to get to her and the town administrator to get to the select board's packet the previous Wednesday, which is 26th. And I think it is safe to reach out to her only because she reached out to me first regarding her thoughts of, I'm trying to be conscientious of how we behave with our town hall partners. About her thoughts of, again, that department head letter to the select board. If Ryan as our town administrator also should have formal input, a formal letter input as opposed to simply discussion at the select board meeting. So I will reach out about those items and I will share it back informationally with the group so that you guys are aware in case I'm slow getting back to some emails over the next few days. All right. Any other comments, questions, concerns from the body? Kevin Baker.
Just one last thing. I just was curious, and maybe this is a question for Mr. Wason. How did the communication go with our town administrator regarding the plastic bag ban and the trash haulers? Those two things that we were trying to get together, and you were going to communicate with him, maybe.
Yes, I have to finish up the plan for the trash and get it over to him.
Okay.
I have a project plan built up. I want to actually, I'll send it to you first to review to make sure I'm not missing any steps because you we've talked about this so much. So I want to make sure it's got all the pieces and it not just be like, yes, I can do that. I'm trying to actually lay out a project plan.
Cool. That'll be helpful for him. And us. Thank you.
All right, we are very, very late on what was appearing to be a relatively short agenda, and I apologize for that, but I think we had some meaningful discussions in there. One last item, just informationally, this past Monday, we had the Town of Littleton FEMA hazard mitigation plan meeting. Each community generally every 5 years reviews hazards and risks, both environmentally and facility wise in their communities. So it is time. It's been 5 years since our last one. It is time for a review of our document, identify any hazards which have been cleared. Sometimes that includes flood hazard, that includes significant infrastructure, businesses or locations with potential hazards or risks or special, out of the ordinary hazards or risks in the community. So that process was started this past Monday with highway, police chief, fire chief, DPW, a number of boards, the building department. Mostly it was town hall folks. It was very odd being the only elected person on the panel. It was very odd, but apparently the Board of Health is one of those pieces that sits on that. So it was very interesting. We've got about 5 more meetings planned over the next few months as we basically reviewed our old plan. Anything has changed, anything obviously we know that needs to be addressed. Basically just looking at the list, and then we'll work through mitigation changes, adjustments that need to be addressed. So as we continue that, I'll keep the board updated as to progress on that once it is either out to the public for draft version for review, or obviously when it's finalized, we'll make sure everybody sees it. As far as our operations, I don't necessarily see it changing anything that we do or Jim does. Again, it's a lot of the stuff we know. We don't have a lot of places that flood here in town, luckily, as far as homes or roadways. Coming from, my previous community, we had whole neighborhoods who 3 or 4 times a year were under a foot of water, and that's just what it was. So as Board of Health, we looked at floodplains for almost every construction, and floodplains were in almost every construction. Some part of that property was in floodplains. We are lucky here in Littleton that is not something that we need to deal with on a regular basis. But obviously, if folks recognize any either special infrastructure in town that we may not have recognized, or it might be new that since in the last 5 years, or are aware of any areas that flood or, have unstable, cliff faces and mudslides. Again, we're not California. We are lucky here in Littleton in a lot of ways that we don't have some of those environmental challenges. Brush fires, we have some large wooded areas, but nothing really has changed other than the town owns a few more than we did 5 years ago. So we're pretty lucky. But if anybody thinks of anything that they'd like to either check and make sure it's on the list, or say, hey, this place was kind of weird, but now it's gone. Can you see if it's on the list or been removed? Please share it with me and I will bring it back to the bigger group. But it's a very smart group, so I don't anticipate there's going to be a lot of stuff that we don't recognize and they don't recognize. So. All right. Any other comments, concerns from the group? Otherwise, I will. Oh, Matt Wason.
Hey, I know we've all experienced it several times when we get our packets and these various engineers. Some people like Civil Solutions, public shout out. We always get a letter that clearly states with white space around it exactly what they're requesting in terms of variances. And other times, like the last one, we get several pages of plans and the variances are typed in a box somewhere on the plan. And we get the very first example where we got a single page drawing with nothing, no information for us to interpret. I am not the most seasoned veteran compared to some of my colleagues here when it comes to septic plan review. However, how do you think we could move forward and say, if you're coming to the board for a public hearing for your septic plan review, thou shalt give us clear communication and like a letter, something where that we know we can read and we're all on the same page, so that we can say, I'm going to read the variance request right off of the letter you sent me, because that's what we're voting on. Because I feel we always turn our wheels about like, well, wait, what? Oh, we forgot the third one, or wait, is that 2 feet or 3 feet or 1 foot? And along those lines, like came up on 2 of them tonight. If you're asking for some variance off of some measurement, I feel like you have to tell us up front what you expect the measurement to be. Saying I want less than the 12-inch offset is different between the one person who wants 10 inches and the one that wants 2 inches. But both of those, we had to ask that question. So I don't know if this is something we could just say, hey, pretty please, like, Brenda, could you ask for that kind of information when somebody gets on the agenda? Or should we have a letter go out to engineers? Or
I was gonna say, before we go to Brenda, I know we've asked in the past that when an engineer or a resident or anyone comes forward requesting a variance, there's a form. Owner of the property, petitioner, requesting a variance for these things. There is a form that I don't think we've ever seen. So I know we made a request a few months ago going, can we simply get that form as part of the packet for each request? Because I'm requesting a hearing, requesting hearing before the board for the following variances. That's what they need to put in and now have all their supporting documentation. So again, yeah, we had some engineers who, it's not the form, but a very clearly spelled out letter. Here's the thing. Here's where we're working. Here's what we found on site. Here's what we'd like to do to remediate it. Here's how it complies to the best of our ability. Agreed. Super easy, even though it's not necessarily our standardized form. And others, it does sometimes seem a little bit buried trying to figure out what exactly is the request. So from Brenda and Jim, if we can, simply start with that form, I think that would be really, really helpful. We're talking about code of conduct and conflict of interest. Certainly the requester for a variance is not the engineer. The engineer is not requesting the variance. It is the property owner who is requesting the variance. But we very, very rarely know who the property owner is. Tonight we had one who the engineer happened to mention who it was. I'm here representing these people. So from a conflict of interest perspective, in some ways, if I don't know who the owner is, I don't necessarily have a conflict of interest if I don't recognize the address. On the flip side, if I don't recognize the address and I say yes to something that somebody else disagrees with, and they go, that's because Dan knew them, or said no because Dan knew them, and I never actually even recognized it because all I had was an address and I didn't recognize the address as someone who I knew or didn't know, is potentially challenging. So again, we tend to grant the variance, but we actually never actually grant it from our side to the petitioner, who is the property owner. We grant it in to a property, but without actually knowing who the petitioner is. So I think probably our first easiest start is if we can simply get those applications for variance attached to each of the hearings. That would probably be our easiest first step. From there, if I think it's some education as we go along, either from Jim with his, or from us as folks come before us. We don't see that many different engineering firms saying it would be really helpful for you when you come before the board, if you have already explained, basically, if you've already come forward and answered some of your questions in your letter, here's what we're doing, here's what we're requesting, here's how we got to that, and here's why, and here's how we're mitigating and how we most closely meet Title V. A lot of our questions are going to be answered before we start our discussion, which is only going to make it probably a smoother process for petitioners and engineering firms engineers coming before us. So certainly I'm happy to again support that if it's the will of the board. If Brenda, as you work on the agenda and get notes from Jim for public hearing requests for waivers, if you can include the applications with it, that's going to say exactly what they're requesting. Doesn't mean that we don't change those requests or add more to it. If you recognize it appears you also need this one, then that's certainly things we can do as well. It's not set to that necessarily. But that might be helpful. Does that kind of sound like it would meet what you're thinking, Matt?
Yes, yeah, something. And I appreciate you going down the road of ask nicely, because I'm really quickly going to go to, we're not going to vote on it unless you get the paperwork to us in time. I just, it wastes our time, it wastes your time, it's not efficient. But we can start with nice.
Well, I was gonna say, certainly at this point, we can, if we get the application of, we're requesting waivers for offset from groundwater and, fill within 10 feet of the property line, we know exactly what's being presented and what we're being asked to approve. And then we can get to okay, let's look at plans, let's look at numbers, let's look at, abutters and all those other pieces, but at least we know what exactly is being requested ahead of time. I'm with you.
As an example, tonight, when we had the other one and I was saying, where on the plan shows this? You would think as they're going through and doing the presentation that they would have pointed out exactly where it was showing, like the fill line, the proposed, all that stuff. Because while I had some good guesses, it took me, a good 10 or 15 minutes to figure out what they were talking about. So, yeah.
Well, to be fair, that's certainly presenting information and knowing information are two different skill sets. So you have some incredible engineers who definitely understand exactly what they're doing and know the answers and have documented all, it's all there. But having the skill set to necessarily be able to clearly and easily describe that to non-engineers is a skill like any other. And some are better at it than others. And that's just a skill that we can help support them in developing of, anticipate questions we're going to ask and ways to best present it so that it's as smooth a process as possible for everyone, for them as well as us. We don't want them frustrated any more than we want to be frustrated with.
And when you
Identifying
pull
what
up
we
a
need to know.
packet 6 months later, because you're talking about the address again, you can find some useful information in the packet that tells you what it was.
Uh-huh.
You lost, Dan.
No, I'm here. Sorry, I dropped something. Or I passed out, one or the other. All right, no, I think that's great. So yeah, Brenda, if you can work with Jim to the best we can anyway, facilitate that process. I know the applications, I actually don't know what the process is for applications at this point. Do they start with us and then go to Jim, or do they start with Jim and then come to us?
They actually start with Jim and then come to us. And I actually take their information and put it on the agenda. But I will work with Jim in reference to a form. I've actually not seen a form. As Matt described, some engineering companies have a very detailed cover letter, exactly what they're coming to the board for, and others not so. But I definitely agree. I think that there should be a variance request form, fill it out exactly, what you want, what you're coming before the board, in addition to having that cover letter and then all of the attachments and the plans sent to me so that we can put in that packet.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Looks like I'm taking a quick glance as we're talking. It looks like Neshoba Associated Boards has
They do have a form.
a click and print PDF paper-based form system for some things. I'm not sure about Title V pieces, but it looks like they've got a PDF fill in the form and send it in kind of format at this point. So that
I
might
can
add
work
a
with
little-
him and create a form. And maybe we can work together with the board, and whatever we need, we can add that and do it as a fillable form on our website. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure if someone has a request for a Title V replacement, that it's not just a phone call. I'm sure there is some form or tool that they are
Yes.
using. It's
Right.
perhaps simply a way that even if it's paper, if they can fax it or email or scan and send or whatever tools they have or resources they have to simply include us in that loop of when they start processing their paperwork of just including us so that we have a copy as well would
Right.
probably meet that. But if that's workable with their workflow, if you wouldn't mind touching base with Jim and seeing if there's a way of incorporating that into his workflow and your workflow, without it being too onerous, we would appreciate it.
Sure.
All right. Any other discussions, comments, concerns from the board before we entertain a motion to adjourn? I see no hands. Gino, you're up, man.
Well, if we don't have any business down and you exploratory all your story, we can close the meeting. I'll leave it up to you guys.
I'm going to take that as a motion to adjourn
Second.
Second.
and a second. Okay, roll call vote. Kevin Baker,
Kevin Baker votes yes.
Kevin Davis.
Kevin Davis votes yes.
Thank you, sir. Gino Fratelloni.
Yes, and thank you for the discussion. It was very interesting. I appreciate it. Nice to see you all, guys.
Thank you, sir. Matt Wason
Matt Wason, yes.
and Dan Kane votes yes. The July 12th, 2023 Board of Health meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much, gentlemen.